The year is 1952 and we are in central London for the third and final adventure for the Doctor Who Big Finish 10th Doctor Adventures Volume 3 of 2019. Today we're going to be taking a look at the third and final story, which is of course The Creeping Death, as written by Roy Gill, starring the 10th Doctor as played by David Tennant and Catherine Tate as of course Donna Noble. Now previously in this series I have of course already reviewed No Place by James Goss and 1 Mile Down by Jenny T. Colgan, and I highly recommend checking out those reviews if you haven't already, in order to get my general opinion of this series so far. The Creeping Death is in fact the story of this box set that I was incredibly excited for, because normally when it comes to a Big Finish release, I normally maybe listen to the trailer, however I don't really look at the story details for the actual stories. However, when it came to this release, I did in fact decide to take a look at what the episodes were going to be about, and when I actually first found out that this episode was going to be based around the London 1952 Great Smog, I was incredibly excited, because this is an area of history that is in fact within recent memory, and it is also something of which that I've really wanted to see a Doctor Who story about, I think for at least 2 years, after I'd previously seen it covered within The Crown, which is of course a Netflix drama starring Claire Foy as the Queen, which if you haven't checked out that already, and if you like history, I certainly recommend doing so, because it is an absolutely brilliant drama, and that episode actually really captured the Great Smog for me, and it was something of which that I really wanted to see Doctor Who cover as well. As per usual, in the description below I will of course leave a link to go to the Big Finish website to take a look at all the different ways that this product can be purchased. Of course, due to it being a part of the 10th Doctor Adventures, as per usual this product is available in a limited edition slipcase in the book format, and the physical copy of that is of course around £35, and the download version is around £24. You can of course also get standard singular versions in a CD case of each individual story released as a part of this volume. The physical version is £10.99 and the download is of course £8.99. However, rather uniquely for The Creeping Death, there is also another format available for this story, which is of course right behind me, and have of course recently released The Creeping Death on vinyl, which is exclusive to Asda stores, the recommended retail being £15, and that is in fact limited edition to 1,000 units. I will in fact be doing a video covering that release very soon. It is of course a part of the Big Finish vinyl series. So taking a look at The Creeping Death, of course this episode, as I say, is one of which that I was incredibly excited for, and I must say it really paid off. I thoroughly enjoyed this adventure. Of course it has been written by Roy Gill, who has previously written a few previous Doctor Who audio adventures, and I must admit, I think the previous reviews that I have done for Roy, I have really respected his way of storytelling. However, sometimes the stories have lacked in a few parts here and there. I can recall an episode in the Unit series, I think it was a sequel to The Mind of Evil a few months back, where I did expect a few things to crop up, however it didn't. However, I really did respect the way that Roy actually presented the story. It was really believable to that of the era of Doctor Who that it was meant to be portraying, and it was in fact a good story, and it had some absolutely brilliant characters. Therefore, The Creeping Death was a story where I was very intrigued to see how Roy Gill was in fact going to use the 10th Doctor, and it turns out I came out of this story being incredibly happy by the way it was actually both written and performed by the entirety of the cast, and I must say I do think that this is actually one of my favourite Doctor Who Big Finish 10th Doctor adventures to date. I really did enjoy it, and I will of course explain why throughout this review. Firstly, taking a look at the production details for this episode, of course as I say, it's written by Roy Gill as per usual, much like the previous 2 stories on this box set. The sound design and music has been created by Howard Carter, the script editor is Matt Fitton, the producer is David Richardson, the executive producers are Nicholas Briggs and Jason Haig-Ellery, the director is Ken Bentley, and the artwork has been created by Tom Webster. Once again, the production on this release has been brilliant. It does sound absolutely phenomenal. A brilliant modern new series story with some great music and great sound design. It really nicely captures the atmosphere that is meant to be presented throughout the script, and that is really nicely presented by the actors and actresses as well that are seen throughout this story, and it sounds absolutely phenomenal on vinyl, especially the theme tune itself. And now taking a look at the cast for this story, of course starting off with David Tennant as the 10th Doctor. Once again, he is really impressive throughout this story, and I think that this is the episode for me where I really started to see his strength 10ths starting to shine through within the audio drama format. Previously, I was a little bit concerned as to if his Doctor would be suited to audio dramas. However, I think that this story really did see David Tennant shine. I did in fact find him rather enjoyable. He is of course a very energetic Doctor, and that does in fact crop up quite a lot throughout this story. However, he can be quite serious at the same time when confronting quite deadly situations, and generally I loved the way that he in fact interacted with all the different characters that he did meet throughout this story. And I think that overall the main word that I can summarise the 10th Doctor with in this episode alone is pleasant. Of course, in the previous one we had 1 Mile Down, where he was interacting with some rather not pleasant people, therefore we got an angry version of the 10th Doctor. And then in the first story, being No Place, we had a rather, once again, fun and eccentric Doctor, and not necessarily that serious side. However, in this one, we kind of have a nice blend between the two, making the Doctor himself feel rather warm and quite friendly. And I think certainly when confronting the actual scenario of this story, that is in fact rather grim, he does certainly shine through quite a lot. He shines through the fog, so to speak. And then we of course also have Catherine Tate, of course playing Donna Noble, and once again I think that this is a story, much like the 10th Doctor, where Catherine Tate did in fact really stand out to me. I think that the actual scenario in this episode was in fact a rather deadly one. Once again, it was in fact a rather difficult one to listen to, with a few grim points here and there. However, I loved the way that she could in fact respond to the different characters and their different scenarios, and I think that if you are in a scenario that is in fact a very deadly situation, or disaster is essentially all around you, you want somebody like Donna Noble to kind of comfort you and sort of put her hand on your shoulder and kind of assure you that everything is going to be okay, because even though she's in this dangerous situation with you and there's the risk that she is not going to get out alive, she still faces the scenario with a smile on her face, and she wants to be nice to everybody that she meets within reason. I think that that is why this relationship, and especially Donna as a companion, works very well, and is probably one of the reasons why she's in fact quite popular within new series Doctor Who fans. And then taking a look at the other members of the cast for this story, it is in fact a rather small cast once again, much like a new series TV story, however a really strong cast this time round. So we have Kieran Boo, who plays Richard Cooper, we have Lauren Cornelius, who plays Ivy Clark, who is almost a temporary companion throughout this story, we have Stephen Critchlow, who is a Big Finish regular, who does also play Malcolm Weishart, we also have Helen Goldwyn, who is a Big Finish director as well as actress, who plays Alice, who is an actress, and we also have her playing the main alien of this story, who is the Fuma Fujium, who I will get onto in a bit. And then we finally have Theo Stevens, who plays Terry Hopkins, and in this story it is a very confined cast. They are all literally in a room together throughout the majority of the first into the middle act, meaning that you get to know the characters almost instantly. Their personalities as well are really unique and different, meaning that it's very easy to keep track of who is within this story and their different character traits and their different aims as well as their different problems. So yeah, a very good cast. I generally think, especially like other than the main characters being Donna and of course the Doctor, I think for me Ivy Clark, played by Lauren Cornelius, she was phenomenal. I really enjoyed her. I think that Lauren put a lot into the character. She was really lovable and likeable and really nicely represented the period as well. I think that generally, I'd never normally say this for like extras or minor characters, but I would love to see her come back at some point. I would love to see the Doctor actually meet up with her again, maybe when he is travelling alone, because I think that Lauren actually has a lot of potential. I think that she's a very good actress. I will be interested to see what other stuff she's actually been in. She's certainly, as I say, an actress with a lot of potential. So now moving on to the narrative of the creeping death, which is of course the main plus point for me, the main selling point of this story, because it is set within London in 1952, when of course the Great Smog did in fact fall upon London. It was an anti-cyclone, and basically due to the Industrial Revolution and all of the fumes that were being pumped into the air, it basically formed a bubble around London, for those of you that do not know, and it basically, in theory, started suffocating people, and the official death toll was never in fact confirmed. However, it is believed around a minimum of 12,000 did in fact die over, I think, the course of around a week, if I can remember rightly, which is honestly devastating. And the main point of this is that it only happened in the 1950s, and to think that we are now in 2019, and that happened in the 1950s. There will be people alive today. The fact that the Great Smog actually happened within almost living memory is rather concerning. It is a very concerning matter. There are people alive today that will have experienced the Great Smog of London. I think that it is a very unusual part of history because up until watching Crown on Netflix a few months ago, if not a year ago I think it was, I never knew about the Great Smog, and it somehow just stuck out to me, and it's something of which I highly recommend if you're interested in history, actually researching. It is a very intriguing thing that happened within London at that time, and it is perfect for a Doctor Who story. Has lots of potential to either be a pure historical or an alien episode, and of course Roy Gill has gone down the alien route. But what I love is the fact that the alien in this story, I'm looking at the credits out of the corner of my eye because I know I'm going to pronounce the name wrong, the Fumifugium, then basically they are essentially a race of ticks, and they are parasites that feeds off the carbon dioxide and the sulfur dioxide that is within the atmosphere of this time, basically the unhealthy pollutants. They are parasites that feed upon this, and they are a race that basically exists within a swarm, and they are portrayed by Helen Goldwyn by using the vocal cords of the actress called Alice, who is in fact a very high-end, very well-off actress, and she's quite hard to in fact like within the early half because she just looks down on absolutely everybody and feels like she's amazing pretty much. She has a lot of confidence, to say the least, and there is this very grim moment where the Fumifugium actually use her vocal cords in order to communicate with the Doctor, and she's in fact pretty much dead on the floor, which is very grim. However, I like grim Doctor Who, and I think that it worked very well throughout this story. Also, there's a person that dies throughout this episode. There is in fact 2 deaths, which is great. Have a death toll. It's very rare with a new series Doctor Who. However, it does in fact, considering we are in this time period, it shows the actual threat of the villain, but also at the same time it shows the threat of the actual scenario that the protagonists are within the period itself, which I did really like. It certainly aided the way of storytelling, and I think that the way the actual person died as well, one of the people, I think that their death was once again rather grim. I think that if it was in the TV show, no doubt they would get quite a lot of Ofcom complaints for it, because it did essentially suffocate, and the way that it was designed by the sound kind of sounded like if somebody was choking on a load of sand, which was very unpleasant to really listen to, but it worked just as well. It was very good, and I love the way that Roy Gill actually written it throughout this story. There's also a little bit of a love triangle throughout this episode as well. There is basically 2 male characters and Ivy Clark, and well, one of the males and Ivy basically think that they are going for the other male. However, it turns out, of course, within this period of the 1950s, being gay or homosexual is of course something of which that is very much frowned upon within society. It was in fact, I think, illegal up until the early 1960s, I want to say, if my history is not playing up on me, and it's something of which that is really well represented within this story. Didn't quite expect it, didn't have to be done, but it's nice to have that representation in there. Something of which that was there for the sake of it. It was instead a part of the characters themselves and the way they developed as people, and having that relationship in there, and in theory that love triangle, actually meant that you got to know the characters a little bit more. You got to know their backstory, and it was something of which that didn't feel crowbarred in. It almost felt natural. It was a problem that no doubt would have occurred in this period. However, we wouldn't have really knew about it because it was of course not really at best public knowledge that people were seeing other people of the same gender. However, it worked very well, and I really do actually praise Roy Gill for using that within this story. It was a very bold thing to do, and I think that it worked, as I say, very well. And of course Donna actually coping with that as well. It is generally known that her concept of history is not something of which that is that strong, and it is interesting to see her interact with those concepts, and actually the shock of having this negative opinion around same-sex couples in this time period. She didn't quite believe that this would be an issue, and she was kind of looking in as an overseer from the future and having those modern influences upon this period and almost generating hope within that relationship, which I thought was very nice. And I also loved the way that Ivy Clark actually sort of faced that scenario as well, when she found out that the male that she was in fact going for was in fact interested in somebody else who wasn't even of the same gender. In a way, for me, I think that this story is right up my street, because naturally I love pure historical episodes of Doctor Who, and I also really love episodes that intertwine science fiction elements within a historical setting. I absolutely love stories such as, say, Rosa from Series 11, and I love The Unquiet Dead with Charles Dickens. That is a story that I always go back to and always absolutely love. I just love the atmosphere behind it. And this story also does a very good job of that, as well as educating the actual listener. There's a moment for me that stands out at the very end where the narrative is pretty much completely over and the Doctor and Donna are saying goodbye to the friends that they've just met, being Ivy and of course the two other males within this story. And there is this brilliant moment where, of course, Donna says something like, "What happens now?" intending to mean to the characters that they have met throughout the episode. However, he goes on to say a little bit of context as to what does happen after the Great Smog. And I really love the way that Roy Gill actually incorporated in the Doctor saying that after the Great Smog, the government did in fact pass under emergency the Clean Air Act, which once again, I love a good bit of law, and I like the fact that that has been incorporated into the story, because in a way, it provides closure for those people that do not go on to research this historical moment any further. They kind of get a bit of closure as to what happened about the Great Smog and the way that people responded to it, and by actually publishing the Act of the Clean Air Act, how they wanted to respond to these fumes in the future and how they wanted to limit such an event happening again. And I think that that is a really nice way to educate but also give closure to the actual narrative itself. And yeah, I really like that and the way that was added within this story. And I also like the way that the characters actually went off on their own little adventure and started off their own life as well. I think that my only main criticism for this story that stood out to me and I felt that could have been developed a little bit further to be more beneficial would have been the development of the Themafugium as an alien or monster, because I think that when you use a swarm or a villain that is on a mass scale as a monster as opposed to just one villain, instead they are kind of a collective almost, I think that there is almost always this risk that they turn into one of those stereotypical Doctor Who monsters that kind of lacks in a personality and kind of lacks in an actual aim. And I think that this story was almost falling into that category. I think that there was a little bit of a risk where I felt like the alien themselves were a little bit underdeveloped. However, I think that the actual setting and context really nicely supported their character and did make them feel a little bit more personal to the actual plot itself. And I think that the Themafugium do in fact have potential to return. I would love to see Roy Gill do a sequel, to be quite honest. I think that for a start I would like to see him write for the new series again, especially with the 10th Doctor. I think that he captured him very well and his personality, and I think that he captures the whole idea of new series Doctor Who very well also, jumping straight into the adventure, that lovely balance between comedy as well as the threats and the death and the rather grim moments that are supported quite a lot throughout this story as well. And I just would like to see a bit more of the Themafugium. I think there is a reference to the Industrial Revolution. One of the characters actually suggests the Satanic Mill, which I thought maybe it was a little Easter egg, but of course one of the episodes in Doom Coalition based around the Industrial Revolution was also called the Satanic Mill, so maybe that is just a little accidental reference in there, but I did quite like that. But maybe I would like to see another fraction of the Themafugium, maybe in the Industrial Revolution, going way back those 200 years prior to the events of this story, and having like another offshoot of them, maybe trying to get into the mines or something like that. I think that there is potential there, and the fact that I can actually think of actual potential further stories is a good thing for the Themafugium. I think that, as I say, they have potential to grow in their little polluted swarm. Out of all of them, I'm going through all of the 9 adventures that we've so far had with the full cast 10th Doctor adventures from volume 1, 2 and 3, and I honestly think The Creeping Death is my favourite. Honestly, I'll need to re-listen to some of the previous ones, I think, in order to give a fair judgment, but I think this is a story that has really broke through to me and really hit an area in my heart that I really did enjoy. I think it will be up there with The Sword of the Cavalier and this one. Both historicals, but I both really enjoyed them. And as I say, probably one of the best of the new series ones. So yeah, big massive thumbs up Roy Gill. He did a great job, along with the cast and along with the production. Really, really good. I might in fact push for a 10 out of 10. And that doesn't normally happen much. So thank you very much for watching this review of The Creeping Death. I hope you have enjoyed it. Of course, as I mentioned at the very start of this video, I have also reviewed the previous 2 adventures in the 10th Doctor Big Finish Volume 3 set, of course including No Place as well as 1 Mile Down. If you haven't previously checked out those reviews, then I highly recommend doing so in order to get my general opinion of the full volume as a whole, in case you decide to get the actual limited edition deluxe box set. I do also recommend checking out my other 10th Doctor episode reviews that I have done from the previously released volumes from Big Finish in order to get my general opinion of the other 10th Doctor adventures. And naturally, if you are a new listener to Big Finish or want to get into Big Finish, then this is certainly a very good place to start. And if you are generally intrigued as to the other areas of Big Finish and the other areas of Doctor Who that they do of course cover, then I certainly recommend checking out my Doctor Who Big Finish review playlist, where of course it does feature all of my reviews from the many different ranges that I do of course review on this channel. And I'm very confident in saying that there is essentially something for everybody, because the Big Finish catalogue is simply so wide and vast. So thanks for watching this review, and I guess I will see you in more Doctor Who Big Finish reviews at some point in the future. And of course, hopefully, I will see you all once again for more Doctor Who 10th Doctor Big Finish audio adventures, maybe in 2020, who knows. Maybe we'll see another box set by then, fingers crossed. So thank you for watching, and I shall see you all next time. Bye for now.